Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Please make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. The memory of that baby shower still cuts like glass against my chest. Everyone had gathered in the community hall we rented, colorful balloons taped to the walls, the scent of homemade jollof rice and fried chicken drifting through the air. My friends had gone out of their way to make it perfect for me because they knew how tense things were with my family. For a while, I allowed myself to breathe in that joy, to laugh as people guessed the baby's gender, to touch my round belly and imagine the life waiting for me. But then my mother walked in with her gift, wrapped neatly in pink paper with a ribbon that looked far too elegant for what lay inside. I opened it with trembling fingers, my husband at my side, his hand squeezing mine. I remember peeling the paper slowly, everyone crowding close to see what Mama had brought. Out came a small white onesie, soft cotton, with bold black letters printed across the front. Surprise baby of a disappointment. The room froze. For a second, no one breathed. Some guests gasped softly, others glanced nervously at me, waiting to see how I would react. My lips twisted into what I forced into a laugh, though my eyes burned with tears that I blinked back. I held the onesie up and said lightly, "Wow, Mama, you always know how to make a statement." People chuckled awkwardly, shifting uncomfortably, pretending to find humor in it. Inside, I wanted to disappear. That piece of fabric was more than just a cruel joke. It was a summary of my entire life. I was born when my parents were already tired of raising children. My sister Naomi, older by 5 years, was their pride. She excelled in school, in sports, in everything. They praised her constantly, and whenever I tried to shine, they reminded me I was an accident. My father, in his drunken honesty, once told me I was the pregnancy that derailed their plans. Naomi was the golden child. I was the burden. That joke on a onesie carried decades of rejection sewn into its seams. I looked at Naomi during the shower, expecting maybe, for once, that she would step in, defend me, say something kind. But her smile was sly, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She laughed louder than anyone else and clapped her hands like the onesie was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. It wasn't new, her joy always seemed to spring from my humiliation. She loved watching me shrink under the weight of my parents' disdain. Still, I smiled through it. I carried the onesie around for the rest of the day like it didn't pierce my soul, thanking everyone for coming, cutting the cake, feeding my husband a slice, hugging friends who whispered, "Are you okay?" into my ear. I lied and said I was fine. I had mastered that performance long ago, pretending words didn't bruise, pretending insults were jokes, pretending I was strong enough to take it. But later that night, alone in my bedroom with the gift bag at my feet, I pulled that onesie out again. My chest heaved with quiet sobs. I pressed it against my stomach and whispered to my unborn daughter, "You will never, ever feel like I did. Not while I'm alive." I thought back to all the ways they had diminished me. When I got my first job at 19, my mother insisted I hand over half my salary because family comes first. When Naomi failed her college tuition payments, I was told it was my responsibility to cover them because I didn't need luxuries like new clothes or saving for my future. When I bought a small car with my own savings, my father took the keys and gave them to Naomi, saying she deserved it more. And every time I resisted, they twisted it, guilt-tripped me, made me feel selfish. They knew exactly how to press the wound of being unwanted, and I let them. For years, I let them, but holding that onesie was like holding proof. It was no longer just in my head. It was right there, words they could never take back, mocking me in front of strangers. I realized then that my daughter was not going to inherit that kind of cruelty. I could stomach it for myself, but for her, never. She was not going to grow up hearing her grandmother call her a mistake. She wasn't going to watch her and celebrate her mother's pain. That night, I called my husband, Jonas, who was still in the living room cleaning up plates. He came in, saw my tears, and without a word pulled me into his arms. His chest was warm, steady, his silence more comforting than anything he could have said. After a while, I whispered, "I think this was the last straw. I can't keep doing this, not with the baby coming." He kissed the top of my head. "Then don't. We'll protect her. We'll protect you." Hearing those words was like water in a desert. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. My family had mocked me, drained me, belittled me, but Jonas reminded me that I had my own family now, one I could build from scratch, on love instead of guilt. The following days were heavy with silence from my side. My phone buzzed with Naomi's posts on Facebook, captions dripping with sarcasm. Best shower ever. Mama always knows how to keep it real. Comments from cousins and old neighbors laughed along. A few messaged me privately, saying they couldn't believe Mama had done that, but none of them said it publicly. That was the way with my family, no one ever stood against the tide. Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I folded the onesie, placed it in a small box, and locked it away in the top drawer of my closet, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted to hold on to that proof of what they were capable of, so that one day, if they tried to convince me I was overreacting, I could look at those words and know my pain was real. As my belly grew heavier and the babies kicked stronger, I repeated a promise to myself every night. This cycle ends here. I may not have had the mother or father I deserved, but my daughter would have me. I would be her safe place, her voice of encouragement, her shield against anyone who tried to belittle her. And if that meant cutting off the people who had raised me, then so be it. But even as I whispered these vows, I knew it wouldn't be easy. My family never let go of control willingly. They had depended on my compliance for too long. And deep down, I feared what would happen when I finally said no. When my daughter Ava finally arrived, the world felt both terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, her cry pierced the hospital room, and I cried harder than I ever thought I could. Holding her, I felt every promise I had made during pregnancy ignite like fire inside me. This little girl was not going to be raised in the shadows of rejection the way I had been. She would never question her worth, never feel like an accident, never bow to anyone's cruelty. I was determined to make sure of it, even if it meant burning bridges that had stood for decades. The first real test came just a week after we brought her home. My mother called, her voice falsely sweet. "So, when can I come see my granddaughter?" she asked, like nothing had happened at the baby shower. I pictured the onesie in the drawer upstairs, the bold black letters, the laughter that had followed. I clenched my jaw. "Mama," I said carefully, "I need some space right now. I'll let you know when we're ready for visitors." Her tone shifted instantly, the syrup gone. "Space? What nonsense is that? Don't be ungrateful. Do you know how many women wish their mothers could come help them with a newborn? And here you are, pushing me away. After everything I've done for you." Those words, "everything I've done for you," landed like stones. I knew exactly what she meant. The money I'd given up, the sacrifices I'd been coerced into, the years of silence I'd endured. I tightened my grip on the phone. "I'll let you know," I repeated, and I hung up before she could guilt me any further. That was the beginning of the storm. Naomi sent me a long text the next morning. "You're being dramatic, as usual. Mama's just joking at the shower. Everyone laughed except you. You should be grateful she even shows up for you. Don't push her away, she won't live forever." I stared at the screen, my baby asleep on my chest, and for the first time, I didn't reply. It wasn't long before the messages turned darker. Cousins chimed in, parroting Naomi's words. Aunts left passive-aggressive comments under the pictures I posted of Ava. "Family is everything. Don't let outsiders ruin your bond." Outsiders. That's what they called Jonas, my husband, as though he wasn't the only person who had truly stood by me. Even distant relatives who barely knew me messaged with little daggers wrapped in fake concern. At first, I felt cornered. I'd never ignored my family before, but then, each night, as Ava's breathing slowed against my chest, I realized something important. Silence was its own kind of power. Every time I didn't respond, I was reclaiming a piece of myself. For years, my voice had been drowned out by theirs. Now, my refusal to answer was louder than any argument. Still, the retaliation escalated. Naomi posted on Facebook again, this time more venomous. "Some people forget who raised them, but karma never forgets." People commented with nods and clapping emojis, clearly aimed at me. Then came the phone calls at odd hours, numbers I didn't recognize. When Jonas answered one night, a man's voice said, "Your wife is ungrateful. She'll ruin your child." Then the line went dead, Jonas's jaw tightened, and I saw a side of him that night I hadn't seen before. He sat down beside me, his voice firm. "We need to take this seriously. They're not going to stop unless we draw a line they can't cross." So we did. We spoke to a lawyer in town, a soft-spoken woman named Clara who listened patiently as I told her everything from the baby shower gift to the threatening calls. She nodded slowly and said, "You have every right to protect yourself. We'll start with a cease and desist. If they escalate further, we'll go to court." I never thought I would be the kind of person to involve the law against my own blood, but holding Ava in my arms while I signed the papers, I knew it was necessary. Love doesn't excuse abuse. Blood doesn't erase cruelty. Protecting my daughter was more important than protecting the image of a happy family. The letter was delivered, and the reaction was swift. My mother called, her voice shaking with fury. "You dare bring strangers into the family business? You dare shame me like this? You think you can survive without us?" Her rage rolled through the phone, but I didn't waver. I told her calmly, "I have survived without you. My whole life. Now, I'm just making it official." The silence that followed was heavy. Then came her final strike. "You are dead to me." She hung up, and I sat there staring at the wall, my heart pounding. Jonas put his arm around me. "Then let's live like we're free," but freedom had its cost. For weeks, Naomi flooded social media with pictures of herself holding babies of friends and cousins, captions like, "Some of us are natural mothers." Relatives I barely knew messaged Jonas, warning him I was unstable, selfish, a danger to Ava. Once, we even had a visit from child services after an anonymous report claimed we weren't feeding our baby properly. I knew exactly who was behind it, but proving it was impossible. Instead of breaking me, though, their tactics hardened me. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of posts, recordings of calls, every threatening message. Clara advised me to keep a file, and I did. Not because I wanted revenge in a dramatic sense, but because I needed armor. Paperwork became my shield, evidence of my sword. If they tried to drag me down, I would not be defenseless anymore. Through it all, I clung to Ava's laughter like a lifeline. She was growing fast, her eyes bright, her smile wide. In the quiet moments, I whispered to her stories of strength, of women who broke cycles, of families that were chosen instead of born. I wanted her to know that family isn't defined by DNA. Family is love, kindness, and respect. Still, at night when she slept, I would sometimes sit in the dark and think of the girl I had once been, the girl who craved her mother's approval, who gave up paychecks and cars just to hear a single "I'm proud of you." That girl still lived in me, wounded, raw. But every day I held my daughter, I felt that girl slowly heal. The truth was clear now. I had to fully cut the chains. No half measures. No hoping they would change. No waiting for apologies that would never come. The onesie had been the last straw, but Ava was the reason. I couldn't save the little girl I once was, but I could save her, and that was enough. The day Jonas and I packed up our little apartment and moved 2 towns away, I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. Boxes filled the back of the truck, Ava strapped in her car seat, her tiny fists opening and closing as she slept. We didn't make an announcement, didn't tell anyone outside of a few close friends. We just left, quietly, like fugitives escaping a war that had been going on in my heart since childhood. Only this time, I wasn't running in fear, I was walking toward freedom. The new neighborhood was nothing fancy, just rows of small houses with gardens in the front and children's toys scattered across lawns. But the first morning I woke up there, sunlight slipping through the curtains, I felt like I could breathe. For once, no phone calls interrupted breakfast, no social media posts cut me open before noon. It was just us, me, Jonas, and Ava figuring out how to be a family. Of course, the silence from my old life wasn't clean. Naomi still posted subtle jabs online, thinly veiled comments about selfish sisters and ungrateful daughters. My mother didn't call anymore, but every few weeks, I would hear from cousins who tried to guilt me. "Mama cries all the time. She says you've abandoned her. Is this really what you want Ava to grow up learning?" Each time, I repeated the same mantra: protecting my daughter is not abandonment. It is love. Jonas stood by me through all of it. When the weight felt too heavy, He reminded me that we were building something better. Slowly, I started to believe it. I joined a local mothers group at the community center, and for the first time, I was surrounded by women who understood. Not just the exhaustion of raising newborns, but the ache of broken families. One woman, Rosa, hugged me after I shared my story, tears in her eyes. "You're not alone," she whispered, and in her voice, I heard what I had been craving all my life: recognition. The real turning point came months later when Naomi sent one final message. It was a long rant, accusing me of tearing the family apart, of poisoning Mama's heart, of being a daughter only in name. At the bottom, she wrote, "One day, Ava will hate you too, just like we do." My hands shook as I read it, but instead of crumbling, I laughed. A deep, full laugh that startled even me. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Their words had no power here. They couldn't reach me, couldn't reach Ava. I showed the message to Clara, our lawyer, and we filed it away with the rest of the evidence. It was no longer a wound. It was just paperwork proof of their own cruelty. Jonas kissed my forehead that night and said, "You've taken back your story." He was right. My story was no longer about chasing my family's approval or being crushed by their rejection. It was about choosing peace over pain, dignity over desperation. Ava was thriving, crawling across the floor, her laughter filling our home like sunlight. Each time she looked up at me with her bright eyes, I felt the strength to keep going, to keep protecting her. I began to build new traditions for us. On Sundays, we baked cookies together, even if half of them burned. In the evenings, Jonas read bedtime stories while I hummed lullabies. On Ava's first birthday, instead of a big party filled with people who didn't truly care, we invited just a handful of friends who had become our chosen family. There was no drama, no insults disguised as jokes, just laughter, cake smeared on cheeks, and love. Sometimes I would catch myself wondering what life might have been like if my mother had been different, if Naomi hadn't thrived on my pain. But those thoughts no longer consumed me. They were like passing shadows on a sunny day, acknowledged, but no longer dominant. I knew now that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering without letting it control me. Years later, when Ava started preschool, she ran out of the classroom one afternoon clutching a picture she had drawn. It was of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. She pointed at them proudly. "That's me, that's Mommy, that's Daddy, no extra figures, no missing pieces, just us." Tears filled my eyes, because in that moment I saw the proof of what I had fought for. She didn't feel unwanted. She didn't feel like a mistake. She felt loved, whole, complete. That was my victory. Not a dramatic showdown, not a public declaration of revenge, but the quiet creation of a life where cruelty had no place. My revenge was my daughter's joy, my husband's steady love, my own peace of mind. And so, to anyone listening, let me tell you this: you don't owe loyalty to pain. Family is not an excuse for abuse. Blood alone doesn't define love. You have the right to walk away, to protect yourself, to create something better. You have the right to rewrite the story. Moral lesson: life has a way of testing our strength. Through those closest to us, the ones we expect to nurture us can sometimes be the very ones who wound us deepest. But pain does not have to be inherited. Cycles of rejection and manipulation can be broken when we choose courage over fear. By drawing boundaries, by daring to say no, we build a new foundation for the generations to come. What I learned is that protection is love in its purest form. Protecting yourself, protecting your child, protecting your peace, it is not selfish. It is sacred. The scars left by family don't have to dictate the rest of your life. Healing begins when you stop seeking validation from those who will never give it and instead embrace the beauty of chosen love, the love you create with your own hands and heart. To anyone listening who has faced cruelty in the name of family, hear this: you are worthy, you are strong, and you are not alone. So guys, if this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with the lesson you're taking away today.